Hello to you too.
I'm excited to see you guys. My coughing friend is no longer.
I haven't been contagious. He told me again yesterday, I'm not contagious. I just cough.
Like many of our classes and students, we do have people who are absent for personal and health reasons today. But welcome, everybody. I just spent a really long time trying to learn how the technology works again. So hopefully that will not, always happen. So I do know that I want to start with, okay, we have to call the order. So I want to approve the agenda with one change, which is to welcome Timmy. Hello, Timmy. Can you turn on your mic and say hello really quick? Turn on your mic. Sorry, I have hope.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you guys for having me.
Talk again.
Thank you guys for having me. Good to see you all.
Great to have you. Thank you.
What
Okay.
division was he?
He is subbing for Russell for technology.
Okay.
So I'd like a move to approve the agenda with that addition to add Timothy Palmer to our list of members. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Chris.
I second.
And a second from Danielle. Thank you so much. All right. Christy, I hope you're not staying for the whole meeting. We can tell that you are sick. Thank you for being here. All right. Okay, so we did that. Okay. All right, reminder that we do have two time-sensitive items at 3:40 and 4 o'clock that are on the agenda, so we'll be going to those when our guests come, and we have to do our consent items by 3:35. Do we have any public comment today? No, okay. Minutes are on their way. Pretty meaty meeting last time, so we're working on those. Okay, president's report. I am trying something new for Margarita's sake and mine, which is the whole point of the president's report is you don't have to do it by the time you send the agenda, right? Because stuff happens after you send the agenda. So it's for this really time sensitive thing. So I'm making a doc. So we already welcomed Timothy, who goes by Timmy. The beauty of this is I can just add another one right now, I think. On the wrong keyboard. All right, I will get better at this.
Yeah, we don't have access to that.
Correct, I'm just showing it. I will be, it's because I just finished it like 10 minutes ago. Welcome.
But you'll send it to us.
I'm gonna attach it to the agenda. Yeah, so that's gonna be the practice to document things, but to have some live stuff, because occasionally we talk about stuff, and then it can be added later, so the record is there. So I want to welcome Angel Corza. My handwriting is that bad. I just got it. Angel Corza, welcome. He is the news editor from the channel. Totally cool. And he's here. We'll be covering CBC, Senate, or ASG, like whatever's happening. But we're very excited to have you here. Also, whenever there's a student in the room, we get pretty interested in your thoughts. So we will watch that. But if you're sitting here, you have any ideas, let us know. All right.
Good, thank you.
Okay, so welcome to, and I'm not gonna do much more adding there, but I will. So for my report today, and on my Zoomers, in theory, I've shared the screen. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see the Google Doc I'm showing? Yes, thank you, wonderful. And actually, I didn't do that. Luke helped me do that. And who is here with me? Great. We're gonna work on that, okay. So this Google Doc is highlighting the report for today, and I just wanted to highlight, I don't know if you noticed, but the agenda had maybe even more categories than before, and maybe more information. So I have a current obsession with really trying to document what's going on. I do feel we're more back in person. We talk about this at steering as well. Like there's all these ways that committees are supposed to connect, and it doesn't always happen. So my goal with the agenda is to really document what's going on. And then we have this ongoing record of the things we've explored this year. So I sort of did this thing where I connected the agenda items today. Oh, Margarita, you are total, I'm sorry. Great. So I sort of connected agenda items to these things like making the Senate work more visible. The focus is going to vary by the year. So these items, particularly the future agenda items. So I have those there so that you guys can look ahead. So if you have a particular thing that, you know, I'm pretty interested in that, you can start thinking about it now. You can decide, you can ask to move it up at a particular time when you're thinking about it, or it's just know that it's sitting here. We do need to deal with the budget forum at some point. We all should watch that if we haven't. This budget sustainability work group is working on like our future, basically. We have faculty in different areas working on it. No, not that one. That's the educational vision plan. That one is working on our future. Different VPs are sharing different parts of it. So I've shared the structure of it. So you can check about that in advance, but we will be reporting out from that. The part I meant to say about the budget sustainability, that is part of our future too. Trying to figure out how to balance our budget, and bless her heart, Katie is going to the 8 a.m. meeting for that this week for me, because I have a doctor's appointment on schedule. So back to looking at this overview of how the agenda is set up. So a smaller goal. So watching shared governance where the Senate gets to give its feedback, and also our standing committees and the role they play in our work. So I have this dream of this timeline that steering Margarita, committee chairs, anyone else who cares, trying to build the timeline of the typical work for the Senate. This year, we're supposed to be hearing new position requests today. We're not. That's the usual timeline. Instead, we're hearing from our president, bless her, from Zoom in Oakland, to explain how we're overfund and we may not be hiring anybody. But what we need to think about if we do get the chance to, and be ready in the spring to do some kind of quick follow-up ranking if necessary, but we'll talk about that when she's here. The collaborating to better serve our students. So we have work happening all over the place. Individual committees, departments, you can see it in program review when people talk about what they're doing. We know CAC's done incredible work with DEI addendum, with new distance ed addendum. We don't always get to talk enough about how to apply that stuff. So we're going to be working on that for this year. And then the excitement of collaborating to problem solve. You all know I didn't plan to be Senate president, and it's not easy, but it is really fun a lot of the time. It's the problem solving side. I mean, it is such a privilege. I get to go to the meetings with administration. I get to hear from faculty who email me their good suggestions all the time, and I speak for you. And it's really liberating because it's not my opinion. It's like a synthesis of everybody's, and that's a very cool place to be. So at any rate, we're going to have the chance to problem solve and collaborate. And then I said the few agenda items. Okay, we're trying these liaison reports a little differently this minute. For this agenda, we're going to try going to that. I'm adding the ones from CPC that kind of overlap so that Tricia doesn't have to add that to her. So that's right there, Tricia. You'll be getting to yours in a moment. So I just wanted to share with people Antioch rental. That's an information item. The target for online offerings that was discussed twice. We didn't get anywhere yet, but it was a good discussion. And then PNR. Thank you, Katie, representing Bill and PNR. And well, you're on that too, right, Kathy? Yeah, thank you. Said, hey, we finished ranking requests in spring. Any chance we can get that money over? So they're getting close on that. And then the CPC retreat began with the restructuring proposal, which I have in an information item. So I've got these things broken out so you can find them. We do have agreement that CPC is kind of too big to have a real discussion, but it's going to take some time to figure it out. We have a new president, so we're kind of waiting to think about it, which was great. Julie Sampson and other members, Jamie's here, and other members of the work group shared an amazing PowerPoint, which is linked, that shows you the vision of different phases. Do you think about CPC and its work? So that's all loaded in there. And then we talked about the A4A recommendations and how we're sort of figuring out how to work those back in. So I'm now going to look at, so I talked about the item 6.1, the CPC work group, so that's in the agenda. So in a moment, I'm going to get out of this doc and back to the agenda, but I wanted to do an update for the Antioch rental agreement. So the agenda has the document tracked off the board agenda, because this all kind of happened. We were a little surprised when some of the leases came up on the agenda and came up sort of after they were here, which is understandable. They were working on it. So I've documented where that came in to the governance at the college, and the board approved them after consulting with deans and some faculty and VPs, like where are rooms we could use. So summer it was smaller. I've got the rooms are in that one. For fall, we have the 7 classrooms in IDC and 4 offices, and we have 2 VC forum classrooms that were added. So that's the current contract. And what I want to be sure to share with everybody here is that, two things. Thank you to our public comment people who really galvanized Senate and FA leadership to take those voices to the administration. Maybe we've been doing it kind of more subtly. We need to be a little more aggressive here. And then, as I shared in my first report to the board, the day after that Senate meeting, the fact that they had to make that public comment shows the failure of our processes, that should have been happening. Now, it was mostly over the summer, it's harder then, but still. So we've all talked about, we want to keep really focusing on making sure we get our chances to contribute to what's going on campus for planning. But the final detail to share, which is very fresh since yesterday, Erica confirmed that our voices were heard and then approved this language via email for today's report. So we're going to extend the current lease to Antioch through summer 2024 if they are interested in keeping it. They had to flee their building for mold and desperately needed a place. They're here now. It's going to take some time to find a new place, maybe. So we thought it was fair to give them that option if they want it. The IDC classrooms have not been used. They're too small. When AB 705 passed, we don't have composition classes at 24 or 25 anymore. They're at 28 or 36. We have not been using those classrooms. Occasionally smaller sections have been placed there, but not many. Those really were unused space. Administration's looked into trying to break walls and stuff to make bigger classrooms. You can't do that. The minute you do that, you've got like $3 million. So we don't know what will happen in the future, maybe offices, but at any rate, so those classrooms weren't used. BC 230 and 237. Janie's still here. He's subbing for oh, yeah. Good. Subbing for Cornelia. Those two classrooms from BC are there. But what will happen is, we will not be adding additional space for rental to Antioch without going through a consultation process with the academic center through the Planning and Resources Committee. Yes, questions, and then I want to see if Jamie wants to add anything.
An Antioch class within WCC today.
Okay.
They showed up too early in Dan Burston's class. They burst into his class when his class was still going.
Oh,
And the instructor said it was going to be like this through the end of the semester.
oh, wow. All right, we'll have to look into that. Where is that? Do you happen to know the class?
It's
We'll look it up.
like probably
Canon
120. I'm not sure what class
Anyway.
it is, but it's like the one WCC 120, probably like 935.
Okay, we can look up Stanley.
We can look it up. I think the 120 to Blue English, who knows? Okay, well, that was an adventure.
Just saying.
Okay, we're working on it. Jamie, do you want to add anything?
Sure, so in terms of what's happening, in addition to the lease going through summer 2024, I've heard that this fall, right, they're gonna start discussions at PNR. This happened at CBC for
Right.
right? For what will happen in fall 2024.
You mean this fall?
Starting this fall, PNR will be.
Oh, you mean the timeline for PNR beginning to consult?
To talk, so we could consult with departments and get an idea of available, ideal, utilizable locations for.
Yeah. Right.
As far as the FA goes, I mean, we are all for Antioch using space on our campus with a couple of caveats to that. I mean, we think it's a very creative use of our facilities to generate income for the school, which is a good thing. However, it cannot impact faculty working conditions. So over the summer, there were part-time faculty that were summarily ejected from their office space, which is not something that the FA can support. And in terms of teaching a classroom where you have, this is the first I've heard about it, you know, Antioch bursting in at the end of your class and not giving you the due respect to finish your class properly, that's an impact in your working conditions as well. There's pedagogical issues, but I'll leave that for the Senate to discuss.
Thank you.
That's not so much of an FA matter. We also have to be very mindful as we try to come to the right proportion of face-to-face versus online classes, or giving away too much of our facilities to outside use, and then not being able to expand more face-to-face classes. The classrooms you mentioned in the IDC, those classrooms, I mean, they've been empty and are basically unusable by our own classes. Those are an ideal space for rental and MPI. Something like the BC classrooms are not
Right.
in any way an ideal space for rental. We had to eject classes. Faculty had to find their own room. It's not that scheduling came up with rooms for them. They had to find their own rooms for their classes for their fall 3 days before in-service. And from a learning conditions point of view, that's 100% completely unacceptable.
Okay, thank you. I know Victor helped too, but faculty were definitely behind that.
And
It was hard.
scheduling helps,
Yeah,
but
the
it's
faculty were
incumbent
doing-
on the faculty to find their room. It's not like, here's a list of possible rooms for you, choose the one you like best. It was faculty had to be more involved in the FA system.
All right, thank you. So, and I appreciate thinking sort of working conditions versus pedagogy, and we're working on that as we have these two different leadership groups on campus. Yes, question.
Two things. One, is the information that's on the agenda accurate as far as the district income and so forth? Is that still accurate regardless of that paragraph there?
So let's see if I can make this a little bigger.
It's under
There we go.
information, yeah.
So you're wondering which part is accurate about the money?
Well, is it all accurate? Is that
This is
information?
directly from the board agenda, so as
Okay.
far as I know. it's
So the
definitely accurate.
Fees and everything, okay.
Yeah.
So, Bill did not, tell us at PNR yesterday that we were gonna have this responsibility, which
Okay.
is fine. I think PNR will be anxious
Right.
to help out.
Yeah,
But my concern is until we've done a little bit of the work that Jamie mentioned is, how are we gonna do this in parallel when we're not really sure how many more classes are gonna go face to face? And the opinion of PNR is we need more face to face.
I'm gonna hold that for a future discussion.
Okay.
This isn't happening too fast, Eric.
Okay, so you're not gonna expect us to
No,
talk about this solution before we have some other answers. Is
that
that
is
true?
correct. It'll
Okay,
be a-
thank you.
We'll work together.
Well,
Beautiful.
we're happy to help, aren't we?
Oh,
Katie?
yeah.
Indeed.
Wonderful, okay. So, the rest of my report is really additions to information, so I'm gonna check if, VP, Maria Villagomez has anything to report, and then we'll go to our liaison report.
Yes, just, 3 or 4 points, today. 2 of them are just confirmations that the course lead training days for, department chairs are scheduled for November 16th and 17th from 2 to 4. They are webinar style presentations. They are not in-person presentations. And they will also be recorded so that we can send those out for flexibility and convenience and all that good stuff. Wanted to let you know that the deans and I have set FTES and FTEF targets for fall 23 and spring 2024. The FTES targets for fall were set at 1% growth, or assuming that we would grow 1% for fall. Well, we all know that's not the case. The actual is that we are down almost 5% in fall of 2023. Some of that, although not all of it, is explained by the fact that our international student population and of course enrollment, and we know that typically IE students enroll in full-time, right? Full-time with us, is down about 5%, 5 or 6% the last time we checked. So that explains part of it. And then the other part, we don't know yet why we're down 5%, about 5%. So you can see what that means is that we will probably not meet our FTES target goals that we had set forth for fall 2023. Considering that, yes.
I'm sorry, so is dual enrollment been added in yet at this point or not?
That's a good question, and it has not, because typically dual enrollments don't come in, aren't documented, aren't officially registered until later on in the semester. What we did do though is look at projections for dual enrollment this semester compared to exactly a year ago. And we are looking at a small increase in dual enrollment, though not enough to get us to at least flat compared to a year ago by the end of the semester. Yeah. So FTES targets for spring, however, knowing that we are down almost 5% in fall, we have established more realistic, more conservative FTES targets for spring. And we are setting them for flat, although, some believe that we should probably set them where we factor in an actual enrollment decline. But one of the other suggestions is, well, let's set them up now for flat, and then, as registrations start coming in for spring, we can make those adjustments to make sure that we are monitoring where we might end up in spring, if that makes sense. Let's see, the other point that I wanted to make, I have two pieces of information that I'm going to share later on, I think, or that you're going to discuss later on in the agenda, and it has to do with the summer 2023 data, or additional data that you had requested. So we'll leave that discussion for then. For now, just wanted to give you a snapshot of where we are with enrollments for fall. And the other piece is we continue to looking at ways in which we can improve our scheduling practices through the Brown Bag series conversations, but also discussed at Dean's Council. Most recently, it was discussed at the last two CPC meetings as well. Everyone is very interested in our scheduling practices and presumably at improving them. So everyone, lots of people are engaged across the campus in these conversations, and I think that's a good thing, right? And so specifically, I am hoping that we can look at creative ways to continue our classes, or to continue to offer our classes without having to cost more to our schedule. So, and just another reminder that HighFlex is an option modality for spring build. So yeah, that's my report.
Great, thank you. Okay, so now we're trying our new liaison report, which is to give a brief oral report, and then senators can ask for more information to agendize in the future, or they can go to those meeting minutes to check if they want to learn more. So this, oh, I forgot. Darn it, I knew I was forgetting something. Okay, so everybody close your eyes. I'm not kidding. Everybody close your eyes. I'm afraid to stop share. I have to find the liaison report. And it's in my calendar, so give me a minute. This is my reality of my life. Actually, maybe the calendar is not as embarrassing. Still close your eyes. Okay. I thought I linked that and I didn't. Okay. All right, here we go. Not too terrible. All right. Thank you for your patience. Okay. So, Stephanie.
Nothing else to add.
All right, we're gonna just speak it out loud. So, perfect. Just speak out loud. Apportionment.
Okay, will be collected for tutoring, which has been a big work finally come to fruition. And tutoring is ongoing on campus, and if anybody needs any help finding provision for what applies, whether it's an online class or in person, you can reach out to Molly directly.
Thank you. Great. And Dee, nothing to report yet?
PLC, yes.
Oh,
But the
gosh,
other
so
three,
sorry.
Yeah. Discussion bullet points, main, talking points on Friday was the mentorship retreat feedback from September 13th. Trying to figure out how best to encourage faculty participation, provocation to the program, qualities that a faculty mentor should possess. Creation of work groups to focus on the program deliverables and goals and et cetera. And then the latter part of the meeting, focused on, it's the establishment of work groups for the semester. There's the mentorship program, the online certification, part-time faculty and community building and affinity spaces. They will be meeting twice a month. One meeting will be, with, the whole committee of TLC, and the other meeting will be the work group.
Beautiful, yeah, sorry, got it mixed up, the nutrition color code, so I didn't see yours, thank you, so perfect, so meeting once in large group and then once in the work groups, right? Once in the work group.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. Okay, thank you. All right, so Trisha.
Okay, so Kim, you covered most of the College Planning Council highlights, I believe. So I just will focus on the ones for the CAC Curriculum Advisory Committee. So a lot of changes coming up. We've been discussing them over the year. The CalGETC, the transferability requirements, course numbering, credit for prior learning, work experience. These are all sort of ongoing discussions and items. And if you want more details, there's some links in the liaison report. Also, of course, the new distance ed addenda and the DEI AA tabs on CurricuNet. And I just want to highlight, though, is that the CAC committee and Tara, of course, in particular, really creating a lot of very useful resources to help faculty in building course outlines and also understanding how some of these changes are going to impact their course and course planning. I think that's the main highlights from CAC. Did that make sense? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
These reports are wonderful, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
All right, Katie.
So in PNR, we completed the reader funding request. We are actually working to find a way to review those earlier so that requesters would have that funding before the semester began, but they have gone out at this point. And PNR is also looking at getting chairs information about which of their equipment requests were funded for 22-23, but it's all a bit stuck still. And in terms of ITC, ITC is also working on that, the equipment request, and is also starting to talk about AI and how it will impact construction. There's a number of different efforts on campus that are looking at AI. And, I know Jason commented that faculty need to be aware of which tools address FERPA and privacy. So that's ITC's major focus right now, and they will be working to try to coordinate all the attempts to unravel the intricacies of AI on campus.
Great, and I'll wait on my DTC report. So thank you, you guys. So I hope you like this model. We'll see how it keeps going. I'm keeping a live Google Doc, which I need the link next time. And then we're gonna freeze it as a PDF and attach it to have that ongoing record. So it's easy to find later, because you can search attachments in Board Doc.
All right,
Okay, beautiful. We talked about 6. Just a reminder, everybody, to update that document. PNR AAP is gonna look at it tomorrow, so we're looking forward to that. Webinars, if you have the time, and if you go to any of these, let us know if something you want to share. Thank you to Kathy, Christy, and Sabrina, who are going to the plenary, and we look forward to hearing their reports about what's most important. Talk about that one. Maria mentioned the Brown Bag series, but it's in here. The next one is on Zoom, and we'll include our scheduling specialist, so that'll be really interesting, I think, for chairs to hear from their end of things. And then we have an in-person one coming, so that's really great. Okay, so what did you guys decide for the Starfish update? Is Christy, you're gonna do this from there? Okay, let me find it.
Yeah, I'm gonna go get it.
All right, make it bigger. Give me a second, you guys. All right.
Okay, we just wanted to give an update on Starfish and where we're at. The progress, we have a mandatory progress survey that goes out every year, every semester. And it's released on the Monday of week 6. So this semester that will be October 2nd. And then there are 2 weeks for faculty to turn it in. We send 2 reminders about the progress survey. And it closes the Monday of week 8 at 11:59 p.m., which is October 16th. That gives counselors and advisors and student services staff 2 weeks to assist students prior to the drop deadline, which is the Friday of week 9. The flags that are listed in the progress survey, I just wanted to remind everybody that the attendance concern flag, the missing assignments flag, the low scores, and the suggestions for improving are flags that are between the faculty and the student. It's early alert information for the students. Hopefully they respond by having discussions with the faculty about the issues that are raised. The in danger of failing flag is the flag that we at Student Services reach out to students. So every student that gets an in danger of failing flag gets a reach out from me. And in that, we provide them with different resources available and direct them to how to schedule an appointment with their academic counselor. There were questions that were raised. An issue came up where the Umoja counselor and advisor were in all students. I'm kind of jumping around a little bit. We were able to correct that for the time being. Students no longer see one primary academic counselor. A year ago, all of academic counseling moved to a group counseling service. So in each student Starfish, in their success network, they have an academic counseling service, and that allows them to book an appointment with multiple counselors. We found that a one-on-one wasn't as effective. So they have a choice of a few different counselors or a group of counselors to choose from. And this was a model that EOPS implemented from the very beginning. And we all academic counseling areas have moved to that model now. Let's see.
Really quick question, Christy. Can we see that group in their network or not?
You don't see it, but
Okay.
the students see it. So if you're,
Okay.
a lot of times students will say, I can't make a counseling appointment. And I can go in and impersonate them and see the group there and that they can. So we remind them how to do it, but you can always ask a student to pull up their Starfish. And if they pull up their Starfish, they will see their group. If they're in EOPS, it will say EOPS academic counseling. If they're in the transfer center or TAP, it'll say TAP academic counseling. If they're just a general, not in any special program, it'll say academic counseling appointments. And when they click on it, they can schedule an appointment. They can pick their days and their times, and they can see a list of all the counselors and their specialty areas. Our goal and our hope is to move to more of the CAPS framework, the Guided Pathways framework, so that the groups are grouped by the Guided Pathways CAPS, and the counselors that are available are the counselors that work with that particular CAP. Until we get more IT support, however, we can't realize that goal. We tried to make it work. Since IT has a lot of major heavy lifting things going on, they have not been that available to do some of these improvements within Starfish. And Steve Reed left about 2 years ago, and he focused on student services. Starfish seems to be running pretty well, given that it has had very little maintenance, but it has had very little maintenance. So somebody made the analogy to our front parking lot. And when there is not a lot of maintenance over time, there start to become holes in the infrastructure. And we are starting to feel that a little bit. And so our dean and the VP of Student Services are advocating for student services technical needs. But we want to get to it before it gets as bad as the parking lot, but we are on that route. So any additional support or encouragement to get additional technical support for the student services, and particularly for Starfish, is much needed. And so in this report, I put one of the examples is just the issues of bringing on new new grants that we have without IT coding, getting those students connected with those grant funded programs is falling behind schedule.
Great, thank you, and heroic that you make this report from, you know, when you're not feeling so well. Thank you so much, and hopefully we'll get more support at Starfish. Okay, I just saw the clock and we are at our time sensitive for the consent item, so I want to get over to do that. We don't want to, luckily they're pretty simple. So we have 2 consent items to socially approve our wonderful liaisons. Again, thank you guys for your great report. And then the final committee Senate chair is embarrassing. Tara and I are going to co-chair AP for this fall. It just didn't work out. There's nobody on that committee now who can chair this fall. They are great members. They're serving. They're committed. It isn't going to work for them. However, we are thinking that by spring, if it doesn't happen, we're just gonna expand it for the spring and have one person. I don't know, we're not there yet, but anyway, so we need these 2 items approved. And I would like to have a motion to approve, and then I'm gonna call by you know, just raising hands and see if anybody wants to abstain or vote no. So moved. Second. Moved by Kathy, seconded by Danielle. So all in favor, we'll just kind of raise your hands on the screen too, okay? Any abstentions? None seen, and any no's. Okay, great, unanimous. Thank you so much. Okay, so it's 3:38. And we have Demetrius here for 3:40. So I knew this was gonna happen. So these items are here. COVID protocols, we had some really productive emails and discussion. I was able to let admin know that we wanted more guidance. We have the summer school data. I even say it, I knew we might run out of time, so we can talk about the future, but it's here. If you want to look at it in advance for our next meeting, we'll put on for the next one. And we do hope to, we'll see what we come back. But after Demetrius presents, we have Erica. It's going to depend how long we want to talk to her. She's zooming in at 4. And you know, if we're done sooner, we'll come back. But I just wanted you I wanted to promise you, we're not going to lose these items. But so I want them here in case, because I can't stand wasting time, but they may have to come back given the questions we may have. So thank you so much. We're going to go to Demetrius now, which is where here. Okay. Yay. So welcome. And I have the PowerPoint for you. Should I share that?
You can share that, yes, it's just a few slides, just to guide the conversation.
Wonderful. Now we have to make sure we can hear you. How do you feel about sitting at the table? Are you really comfortable back there?
I'm fine, but I can speak louder too.
Well, we have a thing with the mic.
I can switching with Tara.
Thank you. We also have got an empty seat. You got it? Jess. Yes. You can see that Jess is water ball, Tara. Water bottle.
I can go to here. You can have your seat. You're fine. And I'll go down here. And I'll probably be done talking in this amount of time.
Thank you. All right. Great to have you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'm here just really sharing a summary of our faculty hiring from last year, which was an eventful activity. I had an opportunity to also share some of our information with some of my peers at the Association of Chief Human Resource Officers. So on here, you're going to see some of the really good things that I thought was worth saying about our cluster process. So we hired 17 faculty members out of 24. We had 22 recruitments that were going on. Again, this was our cluster approach. We do currently have 1 counseling hire that is still pending new hire clearance. And I'm pointing that out because that person is included in the 17, but you do not see that number counted in any reports that are run. So as we talk about FON and that type, those kind of numbers, then this 1 hire is not in there yet because they haven't been entered into the system because we're waiting on some additional clearance things that need to happen first. Okay. So then, some of the benefits of the attention and the intentionality that we paid to our hiring process in the last 2 years. Just anecdotally, within the HR team and within other conversations I've had across campus, there's been an increase in pride. I think people feel really good about how we're focusing on diversity, on how we're focusing on bringing anti-racist practices into our hiring process. So there's some pride in there. There's interest and support for the recruitment process from even outside of the faculty ranks. Given the way we approached our process with cluster screening, how we attempted to do that last year, the number of faculty recruitments that were going on, there were a lot of folks that were not faculty members that expressed interest in wanting to be able to help support that work, because we recognize that those best practices that are kind of honed and refined during the faculty process will have a positive impact on how we handle our recruitments for classified, confidential, and management positions. So that was really nice. We did attract more diversity. You'll see more information in regards to our EEO numbers when I do my report for the board in the fall, but you can see down at the bottom for demographics, of our 17 hires, 76% were from a diverse ethnic background based upon information that was contained within the confidential parts of their application. So that was very exciting because that is not where we were at in the previous years. Previous years, I think we were kind of like below 50% or so for the hires that we're doing. There's been a level of gratitude from candidates that have participated in this process, and feeling, you know, we talk about building a community. And when you come into an organization, you are looking, especially with the tenure process, to spend some time. And so, because it's not a quick process, right? So knowing that they're coming into an organization whose values match their own, and through our recruitment process, the things that we ask them about in the interviews, what our cluster criteria were, as well as what your preferred qualifications were. Those are the types of things that are examples to candidates of the institution that they're interested in and what's important to that institution. So we've had feedback from candidates that appreciated that information. And then just in general, it was a learning opportunity for all of us. And I, you know, talk about these things being successes and things that were positives that came from the recruitment process. I also recognize I'm not naive and recognize that it was a growth opportunity and it was not always smooth sailings and it was very rough sometimes. So even with these positives, I do understand on the other side of that coin, there were some challenges that need to be addressed. And so those are going to be some of the items that we'll be looking for feedback from faculty on for the things that have not already been disclosed to us, so that as we look at refining our processes, we can incorporate those. So
Before we go to the next slide, I don't
Yes,
want to
ma'am.
forget, because my head is full of so many things, but I just want to say, I was the chair of a committee and I was amazed by HR's work through this process. They were innovating, you were trying new things, you did it. It was hard and you did it. And we're not waiting until it's perfect, we're gonna experiment with it. So I just want to express that gratitude publicly and that appreciation of how you guys are working.
thank you, and I appreciate that. And I will say Gordon and Perla were rock stars. You know, they made it happen. So I definitely want to acknowledge them, but thank you for that. So getting to our unfilled positions. So I talked about 17 hires. We have a list here of positions that were not filled, that were filled. So on the right side of the screen, you see our temporary 1-year contracts. Those faculty members are included in the 17 hires that was on the previous screen. But they are in a 1-year contract that is set to end at the end of this academic year in May of 2024. So that's our DSPS position, parent-child workshop, and marine diving technology. Then on the left side, we have failed or delayed, and failed is basically means we did go out, interviews were conducted, and for one reason or another, we were not able to secure a candidate. And then we have delayed, and that basically is that position was not posted. So that's going to be our American, actually, I think American Ethnic Studies did post theirs, but ASL, we were looking at trying to address some accessibility issues, well, not issues, but concerns with that recruitment as well as the committee makeup. So they had opted to delay that recruitment. American Ethics Studies also wanted to delay. There were some revisions that they wanted to do as well. Art History Associate Director of Nursing hired 2 out of 3. So one of those was unsuccessful recruitment. And then for Political Science, that one actually was pulled out prior to, I don't think we even posted that one. But I wanted to list that there because it was part of the approved faculty positions that we were initially looking for.
Will that position go forward if we go forward, or is it just permanently withdrawn?
This one was permanently withdrawn, and so what they'll do is they'll go back through your ranking process when they feel that they're ready to pursue their position. So what's next? As you know, and Erica's been talking about our bond and she's coming in to talk about that again today. So right now, I know that we're not going through the process of ranking, we're kind of not doing anything in that regard. In that sense, it's giving HR an opportunity to go back and look at and revise some of our documentation. One of those documents is let me back up just a little bit. We're gonna do a faculty survey that will come out by the end of this week to gain some feedback from you all in regards to the recruitment process. It is going to allow you to yes, no questions, satisfied, not satisfied, unsatisfied, that type of thing. But you'll also have an opportunity to provide a lengthier response. The survey does collect the email address to ensure that we just have one participant. The results from the survey, the intention is the ratings that we provide, the satisfied, not satisfied, yes, no, that we summarize that information and are able to share that out. The lengthier responses are going to be kept internally within HR. And that is going to help inform, because it's asking you to provide very specific, it's asking you to provide information on experiences during the screening committee process of the trainings. And I just want to ensure confidentiality and that I'm not compromising the integrity of the work that was done. But you'll have some other questions that will indicate kind of if there was concerns. And then we can look at these more detailed responses to understand what we may need to do in the future, what we might need to change. So I just want to assure everyone that should you need to be very detailed for some concerns in your responses, that is fine. It is going to be within HR only and very limited to probably just myself and maybe one other person that will have access to that.
Thank you for that. Can I just go back one paragraph?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I know there were, 24 minus 17 is, I can do that math, 7. But there's 9, other 9, including the 1-year contracts, and then the 6, well, the one that was withdrawn, and then the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that were failed or delayed. So were there 2 searches that just were not accounted for of the 24?
The 24 was the total positions we were hiring. We had 22 recruitments that we were running because I believe it was DSPS as well as the associate degree in the ADN program was counted as 1 recruitment, but it had 3 positions.
Okay.
And counseling. Oh, that's right. You have the counseling had 2 positions as well.
Okay.
And English ended up with 2 because we got the poli-sci one.
Yes, you did.
Oh, okay, so I'm just kind of
Tell the
confused,
song.
Even though it was
a little
just
confused about, okay, so when
We
you're
were
saying there were
next.
22
Committees, but they hired multiple people.
committees, but they hired multiple people.
Right.
Okay, so we were looking to hire last year, aside from the 22 committees, we were looking to hire more than 22. We were looking to hire like what, 28 or something, as I recall, or something.
I think it was 24, so why it was a higher, because we hired 17
Yeah, so
18,
it goes
19,
into
20,
add back.
21, 22, 23, to get to 25, so there's one more
There's one
compared
more
to the
missing.
24.
So there's one more than the 24.
Right, so if we count the 17 hired and these listed ones here, no, wait, this 17 is counted, she told us that.
Yeah.
So 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So out of 24.
Wait, but did you get to withdraw?
But then it was
one
wrong.
as well?
That became English.
Yeah, that one became
That
the second
became
English.
English.
Wow, this is a little confusing.
Well, so I mean, I guess I just was saying, there's some numbers here I don't totally understand.
I can come back and I'll send it to.
Okay,
I'll-
okay,
I didn't look at it that closely, I
Right.
just knew that we only hired 17 people.
okay, no worries, I
And
just,
do you know if the categorically funded still counts out of the 24 since it's not general fund money? It does.
It does
Human
still count as total positions. that-
Oh, Paloma, yeah.
One point that might clarify this discussion. The DSPS, you're right, it is categorically funded. It does count, but that was actually a failed search from the previous year that got rolled over to this year. It got rolled over. So that's been a failed, that
Been rolled twice.
was a previously failed and then was rolled over last year. So it may be impacting the numbers and why you're seeing a discrepancy there.
That would be, I think we were just one off. Remember I was counting
I
and-
were two off, but that.
I think we need to look at the marine diving technology.
That one I have it in the. As a tip, as a 1 year, I'll go double check.
We'll double
I'll
check,
go back-
but
I'll go back and look.
that helps, I think, Paloma. Okay.
Just a quick question, so do the temporary contracts count towards our fund, and do the categorically funded ones count towards our fund? So is our fund number accurate, except for the one position, the counselor that hasn't been hired yet?
Correct.
Okay.
So that'll put us, when it materializes, it will put us at
39.
15 above bond.
We're only 14 now, but it's projected an additional 14.
So not 28, like at one point, we
Well-
were 28.
Well, for this year, we are at 14 above bond, not counting this pending one. When that materializes, it will put us this year at 15 above bond. The projection for next year, should no one retire between now and then, and should the bond advance for 2024 remain the same, we will be at 29 above bond for next year.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the difference then.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Will each person on the committee get a survey?
Yes, anyone that, every faculty member that participated.
Well, not just faculty, will the classified people be surveyed too?
Well, this was a faculty survey and that was the way it was initially built. I'm happy to send it out to them as well, but this also is impacting the AP that's directly related to your hiring process. So I'm happy to take some direction for that, but my intention was initially just to send it out to faculty.
I'd really like my entire committee to be surveyed. Is that not okay? Because we did have a classified member and we had a dean, of course. Are the deans part of that survey?
The deans would be part of that survey, yes, and it's not a right or wrong.
Yeah.
I'm happy to do it either way.
Why don't we have them identify what category they're in? So then they can sort it. If the deans or
Yeah.
staff are more or less satisfied, then faculty, that's interesting information. So why don't we have that? If we do that, we can.
Yeah, they can pick which who they are.
All right.
I have a question about, I guess more of this process, I can understand. When we vote for rankings, are we voting, that's our opinion on like positions available for tenure track positions, right? So at what point is it decided that there are temporary positions available? And I say that because I feel like marine technology was pretty high on our list. And so if we offered a marine, or to be offered only a temporary position and then potentially being fully withdrawn this year seems like, for lack of a better word, like a bait and switch almost.
So
We have a chair for that.
for the temporary contracts, we do go out for the full-time tenure track position. Generally, these temporary contracts come in when we're not able to fill that full-time position. So then we'll offer a 1-year term. So for DSPS, that was, if we didn't offer the temporary 1-year contracts, it would have been a bill.
So is that like, you hired somebody internally that was already here, or?
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily.
I can-
Could have been a part-time faculty member, but not.
I can explain, like English last year. Our finalists took other jobs, so we're sitting there, we didn't get a new hire. But it's English, you guys can survive, you have adjuncts, you've made it this far. In these departments, when that happens, they're like, dang, there's nobody working there, so we'll go to the temp, they do this kind of follow-up search for a temporary contract, right? Is that the right description, kind of faster, and
Yeah.
so it's
that's what
actually a
happened.
favor to the department to get a full-time person in there.
And it may
It's
be
in our
legally, it may be legally required that they have something there as well.
Oh, right, right,
Thank you.
yeah, good question.
How long can we hire that temporary contract? Is it just 1 year?
And whenever the district decides to hire a 1-year full-time leave replacement, which is what we're talking about, it has to go, as per our local process, through the formal hiring structure. So recruitment, posting, hiring, all of that has to happen as well.
So we're waiting for Erica to join us at 4. Oh, second. Okay, I want to remind everybody, this is under action item, because right now we have this timeline where people submit requests for new positions, like on October 10th. I don't think we're gonna be doing that, but before we leave today, we should probably, we need a motion, so I'll just be watching for 350 and, you know, Tara, help me with that, right? Like,
Thank you, Demetrius, for the information.
Absolutely.
and any other questions or follow-up right now with Demetrius? We are 2 minutes early from your section.
Well, and I have 2 more bullets. Can I do those?
Yeah.
All right, so AP 7120, the ad hoc committee that was formed about 2 years ago. Made some revisions to AP 7120 related to the faculty hiring process. However, a lot of those revisions were more suitable for the faculty hiring guideline book. So that's what HR is going to be spending the fall semester working on. But we're also updating 7120, and as we talked about kind of at the beginning of this cycle last year, we're splitting up our APs, the 7120 series in order, or creating a series so that information about the recruitment process for the different classifications is easier to find. So I anticipate Senate receiving the piece that is applicable to the faculty sometime in October with the recommendations that came from the ad hoc committee. So you all can still see if you're kind of feeling and you're still in that same space. And we can start that process with the going through feedback and getting all of the news and all that good stuff. And then that's it.
All
Thank you
right,
very much.
thank you, great, all
Thank you
right,
very much.
Well,
all right. So, welcome, Erica, and thank you. I know you
Hello,
on drive. So
out here in the nick of time.
All right, so, if you have anything you want to display, do you have anything you want to display?
You know, I don't, and it's
Okay.
funny that you say that because I was thinking about the slide that was in the budget forum that I did last week.
Pretty good.
That would be good because it shows the number of compliance faculty, but I have that number off the top of my head, and I think Maria is there. So if I make a mistake, she can correct me.
Okay, do you know the number of the slide? Or is there no way you know?
I'm gonna try to look it up.
She's gonna, Maria's
Yeah.
gonna. look-
Okay, yeah, because that might be good. And I'm sorry, it occurred to me as we were talking. Gee, it'd be really good to have that slide as a point of information.
So, well, thank you. We're really glad you're here for this.
Yeah.
News. So, thank you.
And absolutely, I'm happy to be here because I know, you know, from my experience at any community college, but especially Santa Barbara City College, how important this ranking process is and how every department looks forward to this process, especially if they need a faculty member. And we're sort of in an unusual position this particular year. And so and I was listening to some of the conversation that you have a timeline, a deadline, and we also have a stark reality that may make that timeline and deadline unnecessary. Any luck finding the slide?
No, not yet.
Okay, so the short run is, so the short story here is that last year, when you all were, well, let me back up and say that the Chancellor's Office gives us what our faculty obligation number is going to be at several different points of the year. And they give it to us at the beginning of the year, usually in July. And so in July of 2023, I believe the faculty obligation number that was given to Santa Barbara City College was 221. And that stayed pretty steady throughout the year. And the reason that that stayed steady is that that number is tied to enrollment, but it's also tied to funding. And so some of you may have heard the term freezing the fawn, and that's happened in years where there isn't enough money to fund full-time positions. The Board of Governors can decide to freeze the fawn. But when there's plenty of money, that's when the fawn goes up. And so a year ago at this time, the fawn was based, the faculty obligation number was based at all colleges, but at Santa Barbara on your enrollment, but also on your total funding, which at that time included the emergency conditions allowance. So that was, an amount over and above what our student-centered funding formula amount was. And that stayed pretty consistent. And throughout the year, the governor gives the budget in January. Then from January to the middle of May, there's this great rush about, no, we need this money, we need that money. And the fact is that the governor's budget in January was way optimistic. I mean, it really was. It was a beautiful budget if he had a lot of money, but he really didn't have a lot of money. And so the fawn stayed relatively consistent because it was tied to that money. Well, by the time that it got down to the final budget being approved and the fawn number getting updated, the fawn number for the college actually dropped from 221 down to 197. And so we reported, but after we went through the whole hiring process, you wound up with a total of 211 faculty that counted towards your faculty obligation number. So 211 minus 197 is 14. So basically the fall compliance, and we have to submit the total number of full-time faculty we have on November 1st every year. And that allows colleges who have those last minute searches and all of that to fix a problem in time to do that. So we'll be reporting 211. Well, when the July 2024 compliance number came out in July, 2 months ago, the number is now 183.1. By the way, it's always 0.1. I've never seen a 0.1 faculty, not sure who that looks like. But anyway, so our number has gone from 197 down to 183.1. With the end of emergency conditions and with our current enrollment numbers right now, it is highly likely that that 183 is going to be the number, if not go lower. And but in offering that, I want to offer that that is true for colleges across the state. So as you know, I came from Pasadena City College, and last year we approved and ranked 58 positions to be filled. When all was said and done, the college by the end of June had hired 50. And now based on that advanced number or on the new number, they're now 44 positions over their fawn. Nothing. Yeah. And if nothing changes, looking at their fawn for next year, they're 68 over.
Oh my God.
Okay. So being 14 now and 28 next year, looking pretty good. That's awesome. Now, I say that because I want to offer that a lot of colleges are in the same position we are, right? The LACCD, I think they're 200 over their FON as a district. That's 9 colleges. Now, a lot of things can happen between now and May. Obviously, we know the governor is going to do a budget. He's going to propose a budget in January. It will be interesting to see how pie in the sky it is. Part of what makes it difficult, especially this year, was that the state followed the feds and made October when your taxes were due. And a lot of what the May revision is based on is usually on the actual tax receipts that come in on April 15th. However, they pushed it to October. So in some ways, a lot of our budget for this year is a guesstimate, which is why, you know, we ended last year. And as Brian has explained, we ended last year and they surprised us with a 9%. Actually, it's gone up a little bit deficit factor. And this year we're starting with a 2% deficit factor. Now, when October rolls around, if there's more money than they expected, those deficit factors will go away. There'll be more money available, possibly. And if that happens, then the FON could change. It could also change in January if the governor who's eyeing 2024 and all the politicians are eyeing 2024 from an election perspective, they may wind up giving us more money and that might change the FON as well. So, and if you're sitting there thinking, this is insane, you are correct. This is absolutely insane, but this is what we have to manage with. And so, given all of that, I know that last spring when there were failed searches, there was the question of, okay, are we going to go ahead and fill those failed searches? And I think there was a feeling like, well, you know, they were ranked, but we're in a difficult position right now because we're so much over our FON. But you're all sitting there understandably saying, but what do? We normally rank right now. And I had a conversation with Kim about this. And what we talked about was, I don't like to make you do work that you don't need to do. And so I don't really think that you should spend time doing any ranking at this point. However, I think you should be prepared in the event that it looks like we can hire some folks to do ranking, if that makes any sense.
It does make sense. We talked to Demetris about this too. If we are lucky enough in January for those numbers to change, all the other schools will be in that situation too. It's not like,
that is correct.
All candidates this year because they all went out for recruitment. So we could just do it in spring and have the hiring go into the summer.
Right, because the other colleges, and the number, this is available on the Chancellor's Office website. There is, and I'm sure Maria could give you all the link to it. You can see so many colleges are going to be massively over their FON. So that's the other thing, thinking about how this is both a financial issue, but also a very big political issue. Because if all the colleges are over their FON, is anybody going to be hiring in the fall or in the spring? And that's a tough place for the Chancellor's office to be. That's a tough place for faculty unions to be and academic senates to be. So it's hard all the way around, which is why I can't predict what's going to happen. I just know at this point in time, if the numbers hold true, we're 28 over the FON. And if we were going to hire, we'd have to be really clear about why. Now we have a couple of things. We can look at the DSPS position. One argument in favor of doing that, and really without going through ranking, is that it's categorically funded. And it's part of the services that we're required to provide to our DSPS student population. And 80% of it is funded by categorical funds, and the 20% that the district funds is actually a requirement because it is a district match. Whenever we get categorical funds, there's always a district match involved. So that's one piece of it. But then you have the question of marine diving, because especially because the remaining full-time tenured faculty member has announced his retirement for June. So that might need special consideration as well. But I say that really wanting to make sure everyone knows that I understand there are lots of really compelling reasons for the other positions too. So I'm not suggesting that any decisions have been made. No decisions have been made. I just want to fill you in on the lack of clarity where we are right now, as you consider what you want to do relative to ranking going forward, at least right now.
Okay, I don't know, I'll call because it's probably hard to see.
Yeah, I can't see.
Yeah, I know, we're like, maybe we do this, so Kathy, and did you raise your hand too, Katie? Yeah. Okay, so Kathy and then Katie and then the Zoom. And the Zoom people, just turn on your microphone when we do it, or it's too hard to see the hand for this, okay.
Hi, Erica. Thank you for
Hi,
being
Kathy.
here.
Oh, yeah.
My question is really about the unfilled positions. And you mentioned the two already that were sort of like emergency and categorically funded. A possible action by the Senate be that if in fact we have more money in January, that at least the unfilled positions from last year would go forward, or would it be better for us to re-rank everything in the spring?
I would recommend that we re-rank everything in the spring, because a lot can change between now and the spring. And if you if you lock yourself into having made a decision now, it makes going and possibly needing to argue to undo that decision in the spring more difficult.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So this is Katie. I agree with that. I agree with that strategy. I wonder, I mean, I heard you say, you know, the other day, we're not doing a hiring freeze because you never know. So do you imagine yourself, by chance, developing a criteria for what is an emergency, for example, or just an exception? Like, yes, a categorical, yes, if it's only one faculty, maybe if it's legally required, like in an ADN, you know.
Yeah. So yes, that's why I called it judicious hiring and not a hiring freeze. I may regret that decision at some point. But the reason is that when you announce a hiring freeze, then what happens is the avalanche of requests for exceptions.
Right.
And it becomes but why did you make this exception to the hiring freeze and not that exception to the hiring freeze? So it's really signaling that there needs to be criteria developed. And this is true not just for faculty positions. One of the things that we're talking about in executive committee is we have some positions out there that were promised, that in some cases are part of the way through being filled. You know, this is classified, and I don't know if there are managers in there, but you know, what do? Like, we want to be really careful about what we fill. It's not a hiring freeze. It's let's take a look at how we're looking at all these positions. So that's yes, I think we need to come up with the criteria.
Yeah.
I may have missed it, but what are the consequences of being over?
I'm sorry, what?
What are the consequences of being over our bond?
Okay, so the consequences of being over the fawn is actually the cost of it. And the reason I say that is if a college doesn't meet the FON, they get fined $74,000 per position they do not fill. And that number is the number that the chancellor's office gives us for each full-time faculty. So if you were to break down our budget that comes from the chancellor's office, there's basically a calculation in there that says 211 full-time faculty times $74,000. Okay, except that barely pays in some cases, like even entering faculty, that's just the base salary. That doesn't include the benefits. So even a new faculty member that you hire, if you factor in health benefits, retirement, it usually averages around 110,000 statewide. So the downside, and I'm putting that in air quotes because having full-time faculty is a good thing. I want to be clear. I am all in favor of having full-time faculty. It's just that our budget isn't built in such a way to fully fund those additional faculty members, because what the chancellor's office basically calculates is what it would cost to pay a number of adjuncts to teach a full-time faculty member's load for the year. And that doesn't factor in benefits or retirement. So that's the downside, but it's not, again, full-time faculty is good, but the state doesn't give us enough money to pay for it. Does that make sense?
Can I follow up maybe to Jess? So I think another way to.
Okay, this is Christopher Johnson from English.
Oh, thank you.
To think of the FON is it a floor or a ceiling? So I think really it's a floor.
Yes, it's a floor.
Underneath it, we're penalized. So
right.
Maybe being over it is something that sells it.
Well, yes. Okay, so it is good. So let's look at the positives. It's good when it comes to the 50% law, because 50% of a minimum of 50% of our money has to be spent in the classroom or in supportive instruction. So that's definitely to the positive, no question. But when there is all of that unaccounted for benefits that we have to pay, then that means there are possibly fewer supplies we can afford. There are fewer classified staff we can afford. There are fewer, maintenance jobs we can do, because it all comes from the same pot of money. Does that make sense? So yes, it is very good in some respects. It's great because the FON is the floor, right? And the reality of what the state is willing to give us makes it hard.
So does that mean that each individual above the bond, we're out approximately $110,000?
Mm-hmm. Well,
yeah,
minus whatever the adjuncts would cost.
Minus whatever the adjuncts, but that's also the other piece of this is that when we have more full-time faculty, we need fewer adjuncts. So it does have a ripple effect there too. And I know that there was some consternation about some departments that got full-time faculty members added last year through the hiring process, saw that their adjunct budget lines were reduced. And the reason is because part of having adjuncts is that you don't have full-time faculty, but when you hire more full-time faculty, you don't need as many adjuncts.
But if it's a replacement position, it should be a wash.
Yes.
Enrollment.
Right, except for
right.
enrollment, but in a replacement position, that technically would not be true.
Right, except that if the overall number goes down, then the overall, the chancellor's office, that $74,000 that they definitely would give us goes away.
Right.
So we're making that up.
I think I believe I know this, but if you can just clarify, if we have 111 faculty, even though that's 14 over our bond, do we get 111 times 74,000? Or do we only get, you know, whatever,
197.
99 times 74?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's two.
Yeah.
Oh, 211, sorry.
Yeah. So if we, yeah,
Only
so
get the
they're not-
74,000 for the bond.
Yes,
I was thinking if the problem was the additional expenses, the health, the benefits.
No.
So the whole amount, we do not get any of that amount from the state.
no,
And it's not even the full amount that it costs to hire a full-time.
Right. I thought-
right.
Okay. Wow.
Right, so they're gonna pay, so their floor, what they set the fawn at is what they pay us for in terms of full-time faculty.
Got it.
So, and the other thing to keep in mind, and this is kind of confusing too, because it's crazy, is that we report to the state throughout the year basic pieces of information. And every year there's what is called recalc that happens in February because a lot of things change during the year. So that's where the fact that we have 211 faculty, the state will say, oh, okay, great, you have 211 faculty, but your compliance number was only 197.1. So this is what we're paying you for. And so if our enrollment hasn't gone up in another place, it's not that we'll see a reduction of funding. It just means that as a district, we chose to use our funding in a particular way versus another.
Okay, thank you.
Erica, can you tell me what the philosophy was when the fund was established that counters the 75-25 rule? So where does the fund generally put a college at those percentages?
You mean,
well, you know, we had the bill that passed 100 years ago that we were.
Yeah.
75-25%, you know.
Yeah.
Full time.
So the 75 to, I think what's confusing about that is that the 75-25, where the idea behind it was that 75% of instruction would be delivered by full-time faculty and 25% would be delivered by adjuncts. So that is the goal. That is not a requirement. And that's, I think a lot of folks, because of the language around it, a lot of folks don't know it's a goal. It's not, it's the seal. I mean, it's really your aspirational goal. The fund, however, the fund was established as a way to say, okay, folks, you can't fall below 50%. No matter what, you cannot fall below 50%. And so the faculty obligation number was established back in the mid-90s, and it's never been rebenched since then.
Right.
Okay. But there's a lot of inequities built into that because there are, I'll give North Orange District and Coast District, they sit literally next to each other, but because of what Coast was in the mid-90s versus what North Orange was, Coast's faculty obligation number is 100 less than North Orange. And what that means is they can pay their faculty more because they don't have as high a faculty obligation number. So North Orange has been asking to rebench the FON for a long time. So that's one piece of it. But the second piece of it is so what the chancellor's office tried to do was balance out. You have the goal of 75-25, you have the minimum floor of 50%. So how do we figure out what to do with districts? And so what they did was they tied the faculty obligation number to the level of funding. So that's how that gets determined. And it's kind of it's an arcane calculation.
Right.
But when there have been arguments to rebench the FON, one of the flaws in the 75-25 calculation is that the only thing that counts towards 75% is a full-time faculty member's basic load in primary terms. So, if you have overload, let's say, of 21 TLUs, the only thing that counts in the 75-25 calculation is 15. Because according to the calculation, when a full-time faculty member steps into the classroom to teach that overload class, they no longer count as a full-time faculty member. They don't count as an adjunct, but they don't count as a full-time faculty member. So the 75-25 calculation is artificially low for every single district across the state. Because most districts, at least 50% of the full-time faculty also teach overload. So if the goal is that 75% of instruction should be delivered by full-time faculty, then all of the instruction that is delivered by full-time faculty members should count. But it doesn't. So it's an inaccurate number.
Right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I have another question about, as the fund calculated now, is it based on our full harmless enrollment of the 12,000 FTS? Which means we're gonna get another hit when that ends?
So it's calculated on the rolling 3-year average, because that, as we're moving out of hold harmless and going into the student-centered funding formula, with 70% being about enrollment, it's not just this year's enrollment or last year's enrollment, it's a rolling 3-year average. So yes, it kind of is. 12,000 is the year ago or 2 years ago, but then our current enrollment is now factored in, and the hit to our budget this year was $400,000 on the rolling average.
What are the chances, do you think, of having them extend the hold harmless another year?
Well, I think it's 50-50. From a political perspective, it would be in a lot of districts and a lot of politicians' interest to extend the hold harmless. Partially because if you are no longer meeting your student-centered funding formula, which we're in the student-centered funding formula, but if we fall into hold harmless going forward, we don't get any cost of living adjustments. That's a huge pill for colleges to swallow. So what would happen is you'd start to get, it would be almost impossible for districts to catch up if we lose COLA. So I think that is a huge flaw in the whole idea. I think the other issue is that, as I said at the budget forum the other day, the way the student-centered funding formula is supposed to work is that the more successful you are, the more students you serve, the more money you get. But that means that presents the idea that the state budget for the community college is a blank check. It's not, it's a pie. And so if there are districts that are growing, they're going to realize more from the pie. But that means that if colleges are either below or stagnant, they're going to get less of the pie. It's not a blank check. So that needs to be fixed. And I don't know if there's political wherewithal or appetite to fix that. So it's 50-50. A lot of it's going to depend on how much money the state really believes it has, and whether or not they might look to the rainy day fund that was passed by voters and has been fully funded every year since I think 2014 or 2015. There's a lot of variables.
I'm sorry if I'm the only one who doesn't get this, but if we stay with hold harmless, that kills COLA?
Yes.
Okay.
So we don't want hold harmless, because that takes us back to 17-18 funding floor without COLA going forward.
Right. So sooner or later, we gotta just take it, right?
Yeah.
Remember. So, and again, right now we're below the 10,000 we want to be at, right? So we're protected by the average.
Well, the year isn't over. We ended last year above 10,000, so we're not below it. It's only fall. So I'm gonna say that.
All right, good. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Close. Yeah. Very close.
We're
Okay.
close. We're closer than we want to be. But you know, the fat lady hasn't sung yet, so
So while you're here, and any guys, anybody has a question, our people who are zooming in, because we went to speaker view, we really can't see everyone now, so just turn on your mic if you want to speak. I know Jeff is still here, but he has one of the positions, so if he has any questions, turn on your mic and speak. I have a question as we think about, being ready to rank if we're fortunate enough to end up being able to hire, and I do think there might be a slight chance, and so many colleges are in this situation. Like I just said,
Yeah.
they're gonna be losing departments and stuff, and so I can see some pressure. So let's say that happened. I wonder if we need to still think of it around the emergency standards that we started that conversation with. Because I know in English, we ask every year because we keep track. You know, but is this, do we, and I think it might be more up to the Senate, but since I like your position too. Like, if we do this in the spring, there's probably not gonna be that many positions. Do we want, I mean, I guess anybody can do it, obviously, like say, no, you're not emergency, but do we want to kind of add some layers of criteria that we haven't had in the past? And I know that's more up to us, but you've been in community colleges for a long time, so since you're here, I'm interested in your thinking about that, and we'll continue that question. I think we have till January, and that is true, right? We have till January to think about it. We need the budget.
yeah,
I see the
mean,
October adjustment making a difference.
yeah, I think I just have a hard time believing that anything is going to truly adjust before January. I would be surprised, and I would be interested in hearing what you all think are additional criteria. You know, the categorically funded ones are always a little bit a kind of an odd bird, because they need to get, you know, I think it's important for the Senate to talk about them, because when you have a categorically funded position and it meets the fund, then that means there's one fewer position available. But the fact is there is external funding for it. So it kind of needs to be considered and ranked, and if there is a legal reason to have it, and if there's categorical funding, then it's more of an information item. It's neither fish nor fowl. So I feel like maybe if there isn't something already in your ranking criteria related to categorically funded positions that have legal requirements, there should be.
That's a good point. Actually, I want to grab this, just hit me, you guys. We just talked about the 3 temporary contracts. And we recognize those were after searches where they didn't have a successful hire, but they were so critical for the institution. The DSPS with the categorical funding, marine diving with a program that will have somebody leave.
Yeah.
And parent child doesn't have a full-time faculty member if we don't have the temporary contract. So is there, like, if we were to say, yes, those should go out now because we knew they were critical because they did a temporary contract before, would you do it? I mean, could Demetra start that? Could HR do those 3? I mean, I think the Senate might have to vote on that. You think? Yeah, I'm just brainstorming here, people, but
well, there's an argument to be made that it would be fine for that to happen because they're already accounted for in the number. Am I correct, Maria? I'm correct about that, right? We've already accounted for them.
Demetra said that too,
Yeah, and because unlike, you know, under Title V, if you hire a manager, the maximum you can have a manager is 2 years, but for a faculty position, it cannot be longer than 2 consecutive semesters. Otherwise, they're automatically on the tenure track. So we don't have a choice. We can't just extend the temporary contracts.
We have to do a new hiring process, right?
We'd have to do a new hiring process. And if we tried to put them forward as temporary contracts, the individuals, with the exception of the DSPS position, because categorical funding can be temporary year to year to year, but general funds cannot when it comes to faculty positions. So the individuals in those positions could not just simply be continued. We would have to do, we'd have to do a search. And if we were offering them as temporary contracts, then none of those individuals would be able to apply, with the exception of the DSPS one.
Right.
So how would you feel about that if the Senate decided to try to move those 3 positions forward now? Would you be willing to review that, or would you really tell us to hold off?
No, I would be willing to review that. Absolutely.
Okay.
Kim, can I add one additional piece of information about the DSPS position, if that's all right?
Oh, gosh, of course.
So the DSPS position has actually had 2 failed searches. So according to Senate bylaws, I believe it's supposed to come back for ranking regardless. So I very much appreciate this conversation, but I just want to make sure that that's part of the conversation too, is that regardless, because it's had 2 consecutive failed searches, it's supposed to come back for Senate ranking.
Well, I think fortunately that's not in the bylaws. Am I wrong?
Nope.
I'm looking at
Okay.
them. They're delightfully big for these moments. So
Yeah.
we would be able to approve it again.
Okay.
Categorical, very right. But thank you for asking that.
Yeah.
Totally imagine not.
Yeah.
We would be able to.
Sorry, I just have a point, which is, I mean, Paloma actually mentioning that though brings up a good point, which is that I mean, we think in this room that there are 3 essential emergency positions, but it does strike me before, like, we just go ahead and say, okay, let's put them all 3 up for a search, that there should be some level of conversation and presentation by those 3 departments, because there may be information of which we are not aware currently, or at least I'm not aware.
Well, not for DSPS and not for marine diving, right? Because
Well,
marine
I
diving.
Well, and
On this point though, I mean, Paloma knows the position, so it does seem like there should be some conversation about it before we just say, go ahead.
Well, we won't
Yeah,
just go ahead regardless, but the nature of the conversation, whether they need to present again or bring
Right.
more information, yeah. What's your?
I think it's definitely information, it's more information than it is presentation. And, it's hard not to say, of course, marine diving is near and dear to my heart, since I was the dean over that for 9 years and am a true believer in it. But the fact is, without a full-time faculty member in a highly specialized department, it's not going to make it. And, I don't know, but I think that's an important conversation to have.
And I'm not arguing against replacing all 3.
Right.
I'm just simply saying it would be good to have everybody
Yeah,
present from those departments just to verify, yes, it's obvious.
yeah,
to go forward.
I think the distinction between information and presentation is important. Like, it's more that background of like, it's categorical, so 80% is funded. We have to do this for our students. The marine
Yeah.
diving, and it's 1 person. And what's our 3rd one again?
parent-child
Right.
workshop.
And I'm curious about that. Does that really have to be a full-time position? Because for years, none of the parent-child workshop people were full-time.
Is that?
Mm.
Hey, Tricia's got her hand up, coming from that area. I know it was run by part-timers for great times in the
For
past.
years.
So again, that's information.
But
we
she's
could
gonna
add.
tell us something.
Yeah. Go, Tricia.
No.
Well, actually, I don't have a lot of information about the past part, but I do know that one of the big concerns during the presentation was that the program was, in serious danger of not being able to continue to operate, and it was a valuable resource for students in the community because all the responsibilities and you're working with children, you're working with parents, it to fall on a
Yeah.
part-time person would be difficult. So I feel, of course, that it falls into that area of a consideration, important consideration.
Great point. Thank you. Indeed. Yes.
Hi, I'm in my car driving. But yeah, I want to correct that. It's never been part-time. It's always been full-time. The full-time
That's
director just retired this year. And it was in jeopardy of just not having a full-time person. There's an assistant director that's there who's pretty much helping and assisting the temporary faculty member there. But yeah, there's never been a point where it was part-time, and that was under my department.
Thank you. I do know that they used to all have a full-time person, right? Like each location, so maybe that's.
Each location had a full time. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
maybe-
Each location had a full time. Yep.
Right, the director rather than full-time, but anyway, thank you, Dee, for that context for your area. Okay,
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's important, because I feel like we're on board with it, but if we eliminated that position, they would have to hire a part-time person. And then the school itself, and the families that go there would have to help fund that, the rest of that difference. And so that could put them in a really tough spot. 'Cause my daughter just graduated from another PCW who was part-time, and so I know we had a lot of fundraising to like pay for all the things, and so I just know that it could be potentially crippling.
so that burden on one location, but that full-time person was still doing many things that full-time faculty need to do to have things run, so that, yeah, okay. Yeah, that is right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the issue that the Senate needs to talk about is if we privilege those three over the three other failed searches, we need to discuss that and explain why, right?
There's more than three other fields.
Well, there's the ADN, biology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
American ethnic. There's the.
Right.
Sign language.
Right.
So Erica, could you answer one thing about the ADN hire?
Yeah.
I know Cottage Hospital does support some of those positions. Well, how does that fit into this hiring 2 out of 3? I mean, how much is paid by us and how much by Cottage Hospital?
You know, because I've been away from that for a while, I can't answer that question. So can I get back to you on that? Because I know that they did re-up their grant. So I'll get back to you on that.
So on a position that's paid like that by, say, Cottage Hospital, we're not paying for it, but it still counts towards our fund.
Yeah, and here's the reality of it. Cottage Hospital has committed to paying for those faculty. They don't actually pay for those faculty. We utilize the money to support the program, and the reason they can't is that if we use their money to pay for the faculty, we can't collect apportionment. And that's the rule. And so I guarantee you that the general fund pays for those positions. Cottage Hospital gives money that can support a lot of things like the Allied Health Lab and all of that. It's good that they give us that because it's the amount, that's how they figure out the amount that they give us. So I need to, again, go back and look at it, but I guarantee you it's not you can't see a line item for Cottage attached to those people. Otherwise we could collect no apportionment for them.
I think that we've had some confusion and information given to us over the years.
Yes, you have.
And so I'm glad that you're clarifying that, because the information we've always had is that Cottage Hospital pays for X number of positions, and so I think it's encouraged us to rank all those positions very high.
Well, so I think it's two things. Number one, they still give the college the money.
Right.
So the money comes and it supports the program in a lot of ways. I believe it's in my day, and I have a hard time believing it's not still true, it was a way to support the Allied Learning Lab staff and the coordinator and all of that, who are not faculty. You know, anybody who's not faculty, who's not teaching a student for which we are collecting apportionment. So it's not that we're not getting the money, and ranking the faculty high on the list is, basically, here's the money that's coming in, and these also have BRN requirements too. There are these external forces out there. Now where the college, this is going back many years, but what the Senate did, 23, 24 years ago was not rank the cosmetology faculty all at once when they added the cosmetology program for this very reason, because they didn't think it was fair that the college was adding a program that required at the time, I think it was 2, if not 3 faculty, but this was an up and coming program and it took away from the other needs of the college. So for a long time, those cosmetology faculty were not calculated in the FON. They were outside of the FON. So we were underreporting the number
That
of
was the deal we made with Peter McDougal years ago.
Yes, Peter McDougal and Gail Baker. Mhm. Yeah. See, I'm a historian by I'm a historian by training, and I got the history here, folks.
Right, yeah. So, I think we are gonna need the motion to suspend our timeline at least. We don't necessarily have to pick the new time.
Yeah.
And,
Can I actually have to go to a meeting right
yeah,
now?
thank
Do
you.
you
Yeah,
need
you can
anything
go.
else from me?
If anything comes up, we'll ask you to come back for a shorter time in the future. Thank you.
Okay, great. I was happy to be here. Thank you for all of your great questions and thank you for all of your hard work. These are hard decisions and hard conversations. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good
Okay.
conference. Okay, guys, so, yeah. So I think that, I would love us to get the motion done, so we don't have something on the books we can't do, which is this timeline decision. But I also want to hear what's on you guys' mind for what we need to do next. And I don't know yet. I mean, this is new information, so I think it'll show up for another discussion item next time, but I want to see what you guys have on the table. So my gut would be that we, and Maria help, should we just suspend this until further, we shouldn't like keep picking dates, right? So you guys think we should just suspend the timeline?
Yes, yes.
Until we get in.
We're on hold, like, yeah.
So there's other better motion writers than me.
Why don't we just, maybe we could move to table it?
Move to
Well-
table the timeline?
Well, I think we have to tell people something.
Faculty need to know.
So I'll make
Yeah.
a motion that we communicate to our faculty that due to financial and other constraints, we're suspending the timeline for the hiring process until further notice.
Financial and.
Well, I said other.
Well, I
you
don't
know.
think it's constraints, but just.
Well, it is.
Questions in a way.
Okay,
It's pretty constrained,
Lack of clarity.
like
Lack
lack
of
of money.
clarity regarding cybersecurity.
I mean, it should be like, given that we are,
Change in the fall.
yeah, given that we're 14 to 15 over fund for now, potentially 28. We're suspending a timeline for new positions until we get more direction from our superintendent president,
Yes.
something like that.
But I like having the actual numbers in there.
Yeah.
That's why I
Me
like
too.
that.
Oh.
We have a clear approximately $110,000 has to come out of our pocket if we
Okay,
hire.
this is why I made this Google Doc, you guys, for exactly this moment, so we can like do it. So,
I don't know that the motion has to have all of details, but we
Yeah.
certainly
No.
could send.
The motion does, the communication does.
Yeah, the communication can have more details. But the motion really can
let's just-
be
let's just get to
relatively
the-
simple.
okay.
Yeah,
Let's just
something
get,
like
time
just
out,
current
time
budget
out,
situation
time out,
here.
calling a parliamentarian. vote.
I made a motion.
We need a motion, so we need to be clear about what it is we need a motion for, and what we need a motion for is the timeline.
And that's what my
Everything
motion
else
was.
is, secondary.
That was my motion, to suspend
Well,
the timeline.
Your motion had a lot of other verbiage in it, so we need something just very clear.
here are the new.
I'll make a motion that we suspend the hiring timeline until further notice. Is that good?
That's good.
No, wait,
Okay.
the hiring timeline, that's not right, because it's this thing. It's request for new and replacement
Right.
faculty. Because we
That's
may have a hiring timeline of some kind that we are,
Correct.
we're gonna be talking about.
Correct.
So,
Well, I think that's the other issue though, is I'm not sure that people still shouldn't work on their presentations based on,
But that's what we're deciding right now. If we want to go through that process, if we want to get proposals, if we want
I
them to
don't know
get
that-
data.
I don't know we can decide
Then
that
think of
today.
us.
I don't know that we can decide that today, because when we send that information out, we have to have criteria. And we don't have time tonight
I
today.
think the issue is, from what I'm hearing, is whether or not we want departments to invest time
and putting together proposals, which we all know is laborious, knowing that there's a high probability that nothing will come of it. And we may know more come the spring. So if we suspend the timeline, what we're saying is that they may submit proposals later when we know that there's a chance that some could be funded. And that's what we're trying to decide right now. Or we could keep this timeline and have folks submit stuff, get the data they need from IR, come to the Senate, and we rank as always. Those are our options.
And the people on Zoom see what you're talking about?
No.
Yeah, the shared
Yes.
screen is still working, right, you guys?
Yes,
My
it
Google
is.
Doc? Yeah.
Well,
That's what
I have
we
a
did.
question about if, thank you, Tara, too, for laying that out, the options, but are we considering changing some of the presentation information requirements a little bit later? And if that's the case, then we would not want people to be preparing a whole lot of stuff just now. We'd want to wait till we're clear on that.
Tricia, I think what you're referring to is we talked about needing more information instead of presentation. So like we got the failed.
No, I'm not talking about the three.
I'm
Yeah,
talking
no.
about the questions we asked.
Yeah.
Because remember, Erica said that we might want to add some more.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Criteria.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Got it. Yep. Yeah, well,
Which we're not ready to do yet.
Yeah, we're not ready.
You're not ready
I
to
think
do
it's
for a
super
time.
clear. Nobody should be turning in anything on October 10th.
Yeah.
So I mean, come on, people, right? So the motion for that is to suspend the notice until further notice. Is that right? Or is that it?
Yeah, okay, instead of timeline, could it be to suspend the date, the due date or whatever, I mean, it's not really. Is it to suspend the date?
Well, we had a whole timeline.
Well, I don't like the
Collect data, then they gotta put it
Yeah.
online, and then they gotta come to Senate. So
Yeah,
it's three different
it's
things.
this thing, so whether you care about that, it's like, you request the data. You then get the data, then you write the thing, so like,
It's a
we do need to give people room, like if they do decide with the new criteria, they wanna do the dang thing. Then that's why we have to keep it the timeline, I think, right?
Yeah.
Tricia has her hand up.
Oh, Tricia, yeah.
just that until we get greater clarification of the the budget, because until further notice just sounds so depressing. That it just
Yeah,
means
I hear you, until,
guidance or clarification from the present superintendent or something about the hiring options. I don't know, not options, but situation, something like that.
Guidance.
Who's making this motion?
It's gonna be Kathy once I finish writing it, I think.
It's out of order.
So moved, right? We're not out of order.
We're not out of order, I will let you know.
Drafting a motion is fine, she can draft whatever she wants.
Oh, no, I'm like channeling you guys. What is it? Until we get additional guidance.
Got the power to keep.
On the state budget or on the budget? I'm not sure we have to keep putting more and more stuff in.
Okay, so Kathy, all right,
It's simple.
Keep it simple.
all right, so stop me. Are we done?
Kim, is it redundant to repeat new and replacement position that timeline for positions for 24-25? We can cut that one clause.
Well, okay, so.
Then the notice of happening retirement request, you know about that timeline.
Until we get additional Yeah, guidance.
that's all.
period.
Or 2024.
Yeah.
That kind of leaves it open. Guidance about what? So I think about the budget
Working on it,
situation.
Tricia.
Oh, okay, yeah, sorry.
No, I don't feel at all,
Hey, financial guidance or funding guidance or budgetary guidance. Or guidance from the president. Yeah, that was where we were going.
yeah, like food, not just like the powers that do. Okay,
It is the power.
well, right, but in our world, this is the power.
But it's about funding I think that needs to be in there.
President.
Well, it's always about funding.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could be changing our process though.
I mean, we wanna say fun since that is the issue.
I think we can, but a lot of people really don't know what that means.
So you wanted to.
Just everything the budget.
This is just a motion. This is just a
Just a motion. We can send more communication detailed.
All right,
Oh, that's fine, I'm so
all
moved.
right.
So
I
moved.
second.
Friendly amendment made by Kim. Wait, so Kathy made a motion, Kim offered a friendly amendment, you approve it, and now Danielle is seconding, and now we can vote. We can discuss further.
All right, here's the motion on the table. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? We're just gonna do our like hands on Zoom and in the room, and then we'll just double check any abstention.
I do have a question, actually. Does this prevent us? Does this inhibit us in any way? Because we
No.
could bring back the, like, discussion on the 3 faculty that we want.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct, this is just
realizing
stopping
October
the
10th
call for
is realistic.
new stuff right now.
It's gonna turn into an email. To the faculty.
Basically,
Yeah.
yes.
October 10th
Yes,
is
Steve.
realistic. No, she's raising her hand in on vote.
Oh, thank you, she voted. Okay, so we all voted, we think yes, but I'm double checking, any abstention? Hands up, no abstentions, any no's? Any no's? Okay, unanimous, thank you guys. How are we on time? All right, we have 4 minutes left. So I think we're gonna bring this back to discuss a little bit more. We'll bring some guidelines, steering, will work on what everybody talked about. So I do wanna get, we already committed, we're bringing summer, so we'll bring this stuff back for discussion all at once, except I really think we should do this in our last few minutes. The standby section, because this is kind of fun, out of the brown bag, discussion. I think Cornelia and Julie Brown started from business. And so Dean's Council has been talking about it, and we're not gonna have a lot of time, so Maria said email her if you have further thoughts, but we have 3 minutes left to explain this concept. Would you like to? I'd like to.
So one of the things that came from the first brown bag discussion around the schedule was the idea about, instead of listing all the sections that we typically list under closed status, and that's referring to classes that have a 0 cap, that are not dual enrollment classes, right? To the idea about changing them from closed to maybe standby. And so we are looking at, you know, whether or not we can do that, and what kinds of repercussions or, you know, unintended consequences that might cause. The scheduling team is in the process of testing this. As of this morning, it appears as though standby is not a word, a term that would be that the schedulers have permission to, or a field that the schedulers have permission to change. And so we submitted a support ticket with IT to see if that's something that they would do on their end. So right now, we don't know that this is actually even a possibility.
Okay, the concern was all the red. You like go to the schedule, oh my God, the college is going down the tube, everything's red, everything's closed.
Quick question on that, the standby, would that be applicable for late start courses?
That's exactly typically what it would be applicable to. So anything that currently in the schedule you see as closed, with a 0 cap, right? Intending to be open at some point in the future, but it doesn't include dual enrollment.
But it wouldn't be late start if you wanted them open.
Right, but it could be, so you could put your late start in, or you can
Yeah.
open it right
They
away.
are,
Yeah.
typically they are.
They are what?
They are referring to the late start.
But why would you want to, if you want a late start class to be open, why would you list it as standby?
You wouldn't, you want to be open.
Well, I want to
No, no,
clarify
no.
that the deans don't love late start classes because they feel they may be cannibalizing from the regular start class.
So like to wait.
So they would prefer the late start classes actually are not listed as late start classes, that in fact, the late start classes are standby classes, which will be open if there's student interest.
Right.
After the regular ones fill.
So not all departments operate the same, but many departments, clearly not PE, right? Have pre-built sections ready to, on standby, listed as closed in the schedule of classes, ready to be open for registration, should there be demand.
So, okay, it's 5. You want me to put it back on, you guys?
Yes.
Okay, it's gonna come back on. Chris, you want a final word before we adjourn?
I was just thinking of something like pending, because when we don't have staff, but the class is open, we use pending. Standby makes it seem like it might not. I don't know, it just seems like an odd word.
It just says staff.
I hear you. Pending sounds more promising.
It's just stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
staff-
okay. Thank you guys. We'll put it back on. Thank you again, Timmy, for joining us. See you in 2 weeks, you guys.
So Maria, the scheduling office is already working though on the verbiage of standby.
Just what I think it's verbiage all.
What do you mean verbiage?
Well,
Like, what it would mean?
Well, no, just the word itself. Do we have an option